Hey everyone, and welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Especially to those who are gearing up for the UPSC mains.
Yes.
Today we're diving deep into a topic that's not just relevant for your exam, but is a cornerstone of India's democratic fabric.
Right.
Minority rights enshrined in the Indian Constitution.
You're absolutely right. For anyone aiming to serve in India's top administrative roles,
Yes.
understanding how the Constitution safeguards the rights of its diverse communities is paramount.
Now we've got a treasure trove of resources here. Constitutional articles, landmark judgments, and given some historical context, all geared towards giving you that in-depth understanding that the UPSC examiners love.
Yeah, and it's not about rote memorization.
Right.
It's about grasping the significance of these rights in a way that helps you analyze and articulate your thoughts effectively.
So it's not about memorizing. It's about
going beyond just knowing the what to understanding the why and the so what.
Yeah, I love that. So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Why are minority rights so crucial to a functioning democracy?
Imagine a democracy where only the majority's voice is heard and the rest are sidelined.
Right.
That's not a true democracy, is it?
No, it's not.
Minority rights are vital because they ensure that everyone, regardless of their background, feels included, respected, and empowered to participate.
And our sources emphasize this beautifully with a powerful quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Okay.
No democracy can long survive which does not accept as fundamental to its very existence the recognition of the rights of minorities.
And that couldn't be truer for India.
Right.
A nation known for its incredible diversity.
Yeah.
Safeguarding minority rights is integral to realizing India's vision of unity and diversity.
I love it. Speaking of history,
our
sources take us back to the 19th century.
Right.
To trace the roots of these rights.
Yeah.
It turns out these ideas didn't just pop out of nowhere.
That's right.
Okay.
The concept can be traced back to Europe.
Okay.
Austria and Hungary were early adopters.
Interesting.
Recognizing the rights of ethnic minorities to protect their languages and identities.
They were ahead of their time.
Yeah. After World War I, we saw minority protection clauses being integrated into treaties with nations like Poland and Czechoslovakia.
So these global trends laid the groundwork for India's approach to minority rights.
Exactly.
During its constitution-making process.
Yes.
It's fascinating to see how these ideas traveled across continents.
Indeed.
Wow.
And this historical context adds depth to your understanding of these rights.
For sure. Okay, let's get to the heart of the matter.
Okay.
The key constitutional provisions that guarantee these rights.
Right.
Starting with Articles 29 and 30.
Okay.
For our UPSC aspirants, this is where you really want to take notes.
Absolutely. So Article 29 focuses on cultural preservation, granting all citizens, not just minorities, the right to conserve their distinct culture, language, or script.
So everyone, regardless of whether they belong to a large or small community, has the right to celebrate and uphold the unique heritage.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing and valuing that tapestry of cultures that makes India so unique.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this recognition is crucial for fostering a sense of equality and dignity among all citizens, which are, again, key themes in the Indian Constitution.
Now, Article 30 gets even more specific.
Okay.
Focusing on the rights of minorities in the realm of education.
Yes, Article 30 empowers religious and linguistic minorities to establish and administer their own educational institutions. It recognizes that education is not one size fits all.
Right.
And allows these communities to tailor the educational experience to their specific needs and values.
And the Supreme Court has consistently upheld the importance of Article 30.
Absolutely, right.
Seeing it as a cornerstone of equality and non-discrimination.
A recent example is the Aligarh Muslim University case from this year, 2024.
Oh, wow.
Where the Supreme Court reaffirmed the minority character of the institution.
Okay.
Further solidifying the significance of Article 30.
That's a landmark judgment our listeners should definitely delve deeper into.
Yes.
It highlights the court's stance on protecting the right of minorities to establish and administer their educational institutions. But it's also important to remember that there have been debates and controversies surrounding Article 30 and its interpretation.
You're right. Okay.
Understanding these debates and the different perspectives is crucial for crafting well-rounded answers in your UPSC mains.
Absolutely. Now, our sources also mention Articles 350A and 350B,
Oh, okay.
which deal with language rights.
Right.
Can you shed some light on those?
Of course.
Okay.
Article 350A promotes primary education in the mother tongue.
Okay.
Imagine how much easier learning becomes when you're taught in the language you're most comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Article 350B ensures the concerns of linguistic minorities are heard at the national level by providing for a special officer for linguistic minorities.
So it's not just about acknowledging linguistic diversity, but about actively creating an environment where those languages can thrive.
Exactly.
Now, here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
Our sources point out that the Indian Constitution doesn't have a universal definition of minority.
Yes, and that often trips people up.
Yeah.
But it actually reflects the complexity of India's social fabric.
I'm intrigued.
Okay.
Tell me more.
Well, India's diversity is so vast and multifaceted that trying to pin it down with a rigid definition would be near impossible. So the Constitution leaves room for interpretation and adaptation.
But if there's no single definition, how do we determine who qualifies for these special protections?
That's where the Supreme Court comes in.
Why?
Through landmark judgments like the TMA Pay Foundation case in 2002. The court has established that minorities are identified at the state level.
That means a group that's a minority in one state
Yes.
could be a majority in another?
Precisely.
Wow.
For example, Hindus, who form the majority religion nationally, are considered a minority in states like Punjab and some northeastern states.
Wow, that's a great example. That really highlights how context matters when we talk about minority rights.
It does.
Yeah.
And to identify institutions as minority institutions, especially those under Article 30, the courts look at the founder's intention. Was it established to specifically cater to a minority community?
So it's about understanding the driving force behind the institution's creation.
Right. And they also assess operational aspects. The source of funding, the infrastructure, and the administrative setup.
Got it.
These factors help ascertain whether the institution genuinely serves the targeted minority community.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But while these minority institutions enjoy autonomy, are there any checks and balances to ensure they're operating responsibly?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes. Rights come with responsibilities.
For sure.
The Constitution incorporates judicial safeguards to maintain a balance between autonomy and accountability.
Okay, tell me more about these safeguards.
What
do they involve?
For one, there's a clear prohibition against maladministration.
Okay.
If a minority institution is found to be mismanaged or not meeting certain standards, the government can step in and enforce regulations.
So it's not a carte blanche to do whatever they want.
Right.
There's oversight to ensure they're operating ethically and effectively.
Precisely.
And when it comes to government funding, Article 32 explicitly prohibits discrimination against minority institutions.
Exactly.
So the government cannot provide less support to a minority institution simply because of its minority status.
Exactly. A level playing field is essential when it comes to financial assistance.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive. The historical context, the key constitutional provisions, and how minority is defined.
Yes.
But before we move on, I think it's crucial for our UPSC aspirants to understand the overarching rationale behind these rights. Why were the framers of the Constitution so adamant about including these specific protections?
Well, remember the historical backdrop. India was stepping out from under centuries of colonial rule.
Yes.
A system notorious for exploiting existing divisions. The framers were determined to build a nation where such fissures wouldn't undermine its newly gained independence.
So it was about healing the wounds of the past and creating a more unified and inclusive nation.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They understood that true unity doesn't come from erasing differences, but from respecting and celebrating them.
Yes.
Hence the emphasis on unity and diversity.
Okay, time for us to take a quick breather, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a jiffy to delve deeper into this fascinating topic.
And remember, folks, those preparing for the UPSC Mains, this is gold.
Yes.
Make sure you're taking notes and absorbing these key insights.
And don't forget to like this episode.
Yes.
And subscribe to the deep dive for more insightful discussions like this one. We'll be back with part 2 in a moment.
Yes.
Welcome back to the deep dive, folks. We're continuing our exploration of minority rights in the Indian Constitution, a topic that's essential for any UPSC aspirant.
That's right. And as we delve deeper, keep in mind that the UPSC exam isn't just about knowing the facts, but about demonstrating a nuanced understanding of these concepts.
Exactly. It's about being able to connect the dots, analyze different viewpoints, and articulate your thoughts in a clear and concise manner.
Absolutely. Now, picking up from where we left off, let's unpack this idea of unity and diversity a bit more.
Okay.
It's a phrase that's often used.
Right.
But what does it truly signify in the context of minority rights?
It's a concept that's central to India's identity.
Highlighting the idea that our strength lies in embracing our diversity.
Yes.
Not in trying to homogenize it.
Precisely. The framers of the Constitution recognized that India is a melting pot of cultures, languages, and religions.
Yeah.
They understood that protecting this diversity is not just morally right, but also essential for the nation's well-being.
And that's why Articles 29 and 30 are so crucial.
Yes.
As they provide the legal framework for protecting this diversity.
Exactly. Remember, Article 29 guarantees the right of all citizens to conserve their distinct culture, language, or script.
Okay.
This means no one can be forced to assimilate or abandon their cultural heritage.
Right.
It's about safeguarding the freedom to be different.
And Article 30 takes it a step further.
Okay.
Specifically empowering religious and linguistic minorities to establish and administer their own educational institutions.
This provision acknowledges that education is not just about imparting knowledge, but also about shaping values and worldviews.
It allows minority communities to have control over the educational environment of their children, ensuring that their cultural perspectives are respected and transmitted.
It's about giving them the agency to shape their own destinies and ensure their voices are heard.
Right. And this ties into the concept of group rights, which we touched upon earlier.
Okay.
It's an important distinction for UPSC aspirants to understand.
Okay, let's break that down.
Okay.
We talked about the balance between individual rights and group rights.
Yes.
Can you explain why that balance is so crucial when it comes to protecting minorities?
Think of it this way. Individual rights ensure that everyone is treated equally under the law and has equal access to opportunities.
Right.
Group rights acknowledge that individuals exist within communities.
Yes.
And these communities often face unique challenges based on their history or social standing.
So if we only focus on individual rights, we might miss the bigger picture of how certain groups encounter systemic disadvantages.
Precisely. If a community has faced historical discrimination or exclusion, simply guaranteeing individual equality might not be enough to address those deeply ingrained disadvantages.
So group rights are about recognizing those historical injustices.
Yes.
And providing targeted support to create a more level playing field.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that true equality sometimes requires taking affirmative steps to correct existing inequalities.
Yeah.
This is a key concept for UPSC aspirants to grasp, as it often forms the basis for essay questions and debates.
Right. And this is where the discussions around Article 30 and its interpretation become especially relevant.
Okay.
Some argue that granting special privileges to minority institutions goes against the principle of equality.
It's a valid concern and one that UPSC aspirants should be aware of.
Okay.
However, the counter-argument is that these provisions are not about special treatment, but about creating a more just and equitable society.
So it's not about favoritism, but about ensuring equal opportunity.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that historical injustices and systemic biases create hurdles for certain groups and targeted interventions, such as supporting minority educational institutions might be necessary to overcome those hurdles.
And it's not just about fairness. It's also about preserving the richness and diversity of Indian society.
Absolutely.
A point often emphasized in the UPSC syllabus.
Imagine a world where everyone conforms to a single dominant culture.
Right.
It would be a far less interesting, vibrant, and adaptable world.
Yeah.
Protecting minority rights is about fostering a society that's resilient and capable of adapting to change.
And that benefits everyone, not just minorities.
Yes.
It's a win-win situation.
Yes.
Now let's revisit the fact that the Indian Constitution doesn't have a universal definition of minority.
Okay.
We touched on this earlier. Why do you think the framers chose to leave this term open to interpretation?
India's diversity is remarkably complex.
Okay.
Defining minority rigidly wouldn't capture the nuances of every group or situation.
Right.
It'd be like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
So it was a deliberate choice to allow for flexibility and adaptation.
Exactly. It allows for evolving understandings of identity and societal changes.
Okay.
It also highlights the crucial role of the judiciary in interpreting constitutional rights and ensuring that they remain relevant in a changing world.
It emphasizes the importance of having an independent judiciary that can ensure these protections are implemented fairly and consistently.
Precisely.
Okay.
And that's a key feature of India's democracy,
Right.
which is often a topic of discussion in UPSC examinations.
Now, let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about personal laws in India, a topic that often generates debate and is directly relevant to the UPSC syllabus.
Yes. Personal laws are fascinating because they delve into the intersection of religious freedom and individual rights.
Right.
Another key area for UPSC aspirants to focus on.
Our sources mention the customary laws of the Nagas as an example of how the Constitution recognizes and accommodates the continuation of certain personal laws.
Right.
Can you explain what personal laws are?
Okay.
And why they're important in the context of minority rights?
Personal laws are essentially those that govern matters related to family affairs, inheritance, marriage, divorce, and so on.
Okay.
In India, different religious communities have their own sets of personal laws that are often based on their religious scriptures and traditional practices.
So it's about allowing different communities to follow their own customs and practices in these personal matters.
Exactly. It's a way of respecting and acknowledging the diverse cultural and religious tapestry of the nation.
But how does this reconcile with the principle of equality enshrined in the Constitution? Doesn't having different laws for different groups contradict the idea that everyone should be equal before the law?
That's a very pertinent question, and one that often comes up in discussions about minority rights. Some argue that personal laws can perpetuate inequality, especially for women, and that they clash with the fundamental right to equality.
We've seen instances where personal laws have been used to deny women equal rights within their communities. It's a complex issue with strong arguments on both sides.
Indeed. And these cases highlight the tension that sometimes arises between protecting cultural diversity and upholding the fundamental rights of all individuals. It's a delicate balancing act.
So it's about finding that middle ground, that point where diversity can thrive without compromising individual rights.
Exactly. And the courts often have to step in to adjudicate these matters, striving to strike a balance between respecting religious freedom and ensuring that no one's fundamental rights are violated.
The example of the Nagas and their customary laws, which have constitutional recognition, is quite interesting in this context.
Yes, it demonstrates the Constitution's commitment to accommodating diverse customs and practices. Even when they might differ from the mainstream legal framework, it speaks to the Constitution's flexibility and adaptability.
But this accommodation can't come at the cost of fundamental rights.
Absolutely. The challenge lies in finding ways to safeguard minority cultures and traditions, while ensuring that all individuals, regardless of background, are treated with dignity and respect.
It's about recognizing and navigating the complexities of these issues. Something UPSC aspirants should be prepared for.
Absolutely.
Now we've explored the legal frameworks and constitutional provisions.
Yes.
But let's bring this down to the ground level.
Okay.
How do these rights translate into real-world benefits for minority communities?
Yes.
This is where your understanding of the practical implications of these rights comes into play for the UPSC exam.
It's essential to go beyond the theoretical and see how these rights play out in people's everyday lives.
Give us some concrete examples.
Okay.
How do these protections actually make a difference for people on the ground?
Well, the right to establish and administer their own educational institutions has been incredibly impactful for minority communities.
Okay.
It's allowed them to create schools and colleges that align with their needs and values, ensuring that their languages and cultures are preserved for future generations.
It goes beyond simply providing access to education. It's about empowering communities to shape the educational experience of their children in a way that resonates with their cultural and religious beliefs.
Precisely. And this has a ripple effect, leading to greater economic and social empowerment within those communities.
So education becomes a tool for upliftment and empowerment.
Exactly.
What about other tangible benefits?
Okay.
How do these rights impact areas like language, culture, and religious practice.
Okay.
These are all areas that UPSC examiners often focus on.
The right to conserve one's language, culture, and script,
Right.
as enshrined in Article 29,
Yes.
allows minority communities to maintain their unique identities in a diverse society.
Okay.
It's about safeguarding their right to be different,
Yes.
to celebrate their distinct traditions and practices.
And that protection extends to their religious practices as well.
Absolutely. Articles 25 to 28 guarantee freedom of religion for all individuals and communities,
Okay.
including the right to establish and maintain their own places of worship.
So they can practice their religion freely.
Yes, they can build temples, mosques, churches,
Yeah.
or any other religious structures without interference.
And this freedom goes beyond individual belief.
Right?
It encompasses the collective expression of faith as well.
Exactly. It includes the right to hold religious gatherings, processions, and festivals,
Okay.
ensuring that they can practice their faith openly and without fear.
So these rights have a direct impact on the daily lives of people from minority communities, enabling them to live their lives authentically and without fear of discrimination.
And these rights aren't static. They evolve with the times.
Right. It's an ongoing process, as we discussed earlier. And with society constantly evolving, new challenges emerge. New technologies disrupt traditional ways of life.
Yeah.
And our understanding of identity is continuously reshaped.
Right.
How do we ensure that these constitutional safeguards remain relevant and effective amidst all this change?
That's the key question, and one that often forms the basis of UPSC discussions.
Right.
It requires ongoing dialogue, debate, and a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances.
So it's not enough to just have these rights on paper.
Right.
It's about ensuring they're implemented and interpreted in a way that reflects the evolving realities of society.
Exactly. And that requires constant vigilance and engagement from everyone.
Right.
Citizens, lawmakers, and the judiciary.
Yeah.
To ensure the true spirit of these provisions is upheld.
Okay, we're going to take another quick break here, but don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Because in the final part of our deep dives, we'll be looking at the contemporary challenges India faces in upholding minority rights, as well as the safeguards that are in place to ensure these rights are not misused.
And for our UPSC aspirants, this is where you can really score points by demonstrating your understanding of the practical realities and the complexities surrounding minority rights in India.
Absolutely. We'll be back in a moment.
Yes.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into minority rights in the Indian Constitution. We've covered a lot of ground, but no deep dive is complete without examining the challenges to these rights in contemporary India. This is particularly crucial for UPSC aspirants, as these challenges often form the basis for essay questions and discussions.
Absolutely. The sociopolitical landscape is always in flux, and understanding these contemporary challenges is key to demonstrating a holistic understanding of the subject.
So what are some of the key challenges that stand out to you? What should our UPSC aspirants be paying close attention to?
One significant challenge is the rise of majoritarianism, where the rights and interests of the majority community are prioritized over those of minority communities. This can lead to a sense of marginalization and exclusion among minorities, undermining the very essence of inclusivity and diversity that the Constitution strives to uphold.
And we've seen instances of this playing out in society, right, where certain minority communities feel their concerns are being overlooked or their voices silenced.
Yes, and for UPSC aspirants, being able to analyze these trends and articulate their impact on the social fabric is crucial.
So it's not enough to just know the articles and legal provisions. It's about understanding the social and political dynamics that influence how these rights are implemented and experienced on the ground.
Exactly. Another challenge is the increasing polarization of society along religious or ethnic lines. This can fuel tensions and conflicts between different communities, making it harder to foster a sense of shared national identity and unity, a concept that's often discussed in the UPSC syllabus.
And this polarization is often amplified by the spread of misinformation and hate speech online, right? It's a new dimension to these age-old challenges.
Absolutely. Social media and technology can exacerbate these divisions, creating an environment of fear and distrust. For UPSC aspirants, understanding these new challenges and their implications is crucial.
It shows that the environment in which these rights exist matters as much as the legal framework itself.
Precisely. And here, the role of leadership becomes paramount. Political leaders, community leaders, religious leaders, they all have a responsibility to actively promote dialogue, understanding, and respect between different communities.
It's about fostering a culture of inclusivity where differences are seen not as threats, but but as strengths, a concept that resonates deeply with India's philosophy of unity and diversity.
Exactly. And this is something our UPSC aspirants as future leaders should be contemplating deeply. How can they contribute to creating a society where every citizen feels a sense of belonging and has equal opportunities to thrive?
That's a powerful question, and one that requires not just knowledge of the law, but also empathy, understanding, and a commitment to social justice. Now, let's talk about the tension between individual rights and group rights, a topic we've touched upon throughout our deep dive. How do you see that playing out in contemporary India?
It's an ongoing negotiation, constantly being reevaluated as society evolves and new interpretations of identity emerge. Think about personal laws, for instance. Some have been challenged for being discriminatory against women or violating individual rights.
So even within minority communities, there can be tension between traditional practices and evolving notions of equality.
Precisely, and the judiciary plays a vital role in navigating these complex cases, trying to strike a balance between religious freedom and ensuring that individual rights aren't compromised. It's a tightrope walk, and there's no easy answer.
It highlights that the protection of minority rights is a continuous process of adaptation, dialogue, and judicial interpretation.
You've got it. And while we focused on laws and institutions, it ultimately boils down to how we treat each other, how we respect each other's differences, and how we create a society where everyone feels safe, valued, and included. That's a responsibility we all share, not just those in positions of power.
That's a powerful message and a great note to end this segment of our deep dive on.
Absolutely.
Now, before we wrap up completely, let's not forget about those judicial safeguards we discussed earlier. They're in place to ensure that these rights, while essential, are not misused or exploited.
That's a crucial point, especially for UPSC aspirants. Understanding these safeguards demonstrates a comprehensive grasp of the topic.
So can you remind us again what these safeguards entail? How do they work to ensure that minority rights are exercised responsibly?
Remember, the right to establish and administer educational institutions under Article 30 doesn't give minority institutions absolute autonomy. For instance, maladministration is strictly prohibited. If an institution is found to be mismanaged or failing to meet established standards, the government has the right to intervene.
So it's about making sure these institutions are truly serving the communities they're meant to benefit.
Exactly. It's about accountability and transparency, ensuring that these provisions are not misused for personal gain or to the detriment of the larger community.
And what about government funding? Are there mechanisms to ensure that minority institutions don't receive preferential treatment when it comes to financial assistance?
Absolutely. Article 32 specifically prohibits discrimination against minority institutions. When granting aid, the playing field has to be level. Minority institutions should be treated fairly and equitably when receiving government support.
This is important not just for fairness, but also to avoid accusations of favoritism or bias.
Precisely. It ensures that these provisions are seen as genuine efforts to promote equality and inclusion rather than tools for political maneuvering.
Now, are there any other safeguards beyond these financial and administrative checks?
The judiciary plays a critical role as well. Remember, the courts have the power to interpret and apply these provisions, ensuring a balance between the interests of minority communities and the broader needs of society.
So if someone believes their rights are being violated or that a minority institution is acting unlawfully, they can seek redress from the courts.
Exactly. The courts act as a check on both the government and minority institutions, ensuring that the spirit of these provisions is upheld and not distorted.
It's a system of checks and balances that helps maintain a delicate equilibrium.
That's a great way to put it, and it emphasizes the complexity of this issue. There's no simple solution, no one-size-fits-all approach. It requires continuous vigilance, nuanced interpretation, and a willingness to adapt to evolving circumstances.
It highlights that minority rights aren't absolute. They exist within a framework of laws, regulations, and judicial oversight.
Exactly, and it's this framework that helps ensure that these rights are exercised responsibly and benefit both the minority communities and the nation as a whole.
So it's not just about protecting these rights in isolation. It's about creating a system where those rights can be exercised fairly, justly, and sustainably.
Well said. It's about striking a balance between individual rights and group rights, between cultural diversity and national unity, and between legal provisions and social realities.
And that's a challenge that demands continuous dialogue engagement and a commitment to the principles of equality, diversity, and inclusivity that are at the heart of the Indian Constitution.
Absolutely.
Well, UPSC aspirants, we've covered a lot of ground in our deep dive into minority rights in the Indian Constitution. We've explored the historical context, the key articles, the complexities of defining minority, and even the safeguards that ensure these rights are exercised responsibly.
We've also delved into the contemporary challenges India faces in upholding these rights and discussed how these issues might be framed in the context of your UPSC exam.
Remember, this deep dive is just a starting point. We've provided links to all the sources we discussed. So be sure to explore them further, delve deeper into these issues, and engage with the various debates surrounding minority rights in India. The more you understand, the better prepared you'll be for your exams and your future roles as leaders and policymakers.
Don't be afraid to question assumptions. Think critically and develop your own informed opinions.
And if you found this deep dive helpful, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the Deep